Hi, my name is David. Thanks for stopping by today and checking out my channel. I wanted to share today something that I think is really important when drawing, and that is warming up. You should think of warming up in drawing as a way to get yourself limber and loose, and liken it much the way you do an exercise. I had a great instructor a couple of years ago who said you wouldn't work out without stretching, and drawing is really no different. You shouldn't start drawing without doing some kind of warm-up beforehand. I'm a big proponent of drawing the human figure and faces. I think that one of the best ways to learn to draw is drawing the figure, because it is so complex. If you can learn to draw the human figure and faces, you're really going to be able to draw just about anything, and it's going to give you so much confidence. So what I'm showing you today is how I warm up. So what I would recommend when trying to warm up is back out the amount of time that you have available to draw, and then from there figure out how much of that time you should dedicate to a warm-up. So for example, if you're thinking, I'm going to draw or sketch for about an hour today, I would back up out of there and dedicate at least 10 to 15 minutes to a warm-up. The more important part of how you divvy up this time is within the actual warm-up. And the way to think about this actual warm-up is you start slower and build up. And when I say slower, it sounds kind of funny, but that actually means faster increments of time. So very simply stated, you would start with, for example, 5 15-second sketches, and then go to 3 or 4 1-minute sketches, and then build up to a couple of 5-minute sketches. So you can kind of see the progression of that logic. You're working in smaller time intervals quicker, and then you're building up to longer time intervals. Another big reason that it's important to warm up before you sketch is just the amount of confidence it's going to give you. So if you were, say for example, you're going to draw a portrait of a loved one, right? If you were to just dive into drawing that portrait without being warmed up, your confidence in doing that portrait is going to be really diminished. If you spend time warming up, you're just going to flow, and things are going to flow out of you in your line work and your ability to observe. You're going to just be more confident because you've warmed up in practice, doing those observations, and doing that line work for a good 10 to 15 minutes before you get into the actual sketch. So that whole approach actually kind of goes to a bigger practice that you should get into, and I'm a big fan of, is really getting into the habit of drawing every day. So in the same way that you are warming up for one specific sketch by using a chunk of time, getting in the habit of drawing every day is going to keep you in good form with your drawing skills. So, right, if you take a month off from drawing and then start up again, you're going to notice some big, I guess I would call them flaws, or just being out of practice because you haven't picked up a pencil in a long time. So just get in the habit of trying to draw every day. You know, you don't have to be religious about it. It doesn't have to be something that you beat yourself up about. If you're not drawing every day, it's just, that is the bar you want to hit. But even if you're drawing 3 to 4 times a week, it's better than not drawing at all. I think the key thing to remember here is just getting in the habit of being regular in your practice of drawing. So a lot of the source imagery that I'm using here is something that you also want to compile and have at the ready for yourself. So you don't want to get into a position where you want to start drawing and then all of a sudden you spend 10 to 20 minutes just trying to find source material, and then your kind of allotted time that you set aside to draw is all eaten up by locating source material. There are a couple really good websites out there. I will post a link below to one that I go back to called Line of Action. And what they're really great for is they set up what's called class mode. So you can set up a specific amount of time and structure it so that you are doing what I talked about just a minute ago of phasing in intervals of time in which you're drawing. And then they accompany that with source material, which is just free. It's a really great resource. So I'll post a link below. So the idea simply is a different image pops up for each amount of time that you specify, and you can just have it on your iPad or on your laptop or whatnot and use that as your reference as you're drawing. Ideally, the best thing is to draw from life, but that is not practical for a lot of people unless you're taking a class or unless you have friends and family that are willing to model for you. But, you know, let's be realistic, that's not going to happen all the time. But it is the best thing to observe when you are drawing, because you're going to learn so much about the human form, the human figure from life that you can't learn from a photo. There are inherently a lot of distortions that take place in photography that you will not be able to see in the photograph, but you can see in real life. If you're not sure what I mean by this, I would just do a side-by-side comparison. So take a photo of somebody, even if it's just on your phone, and then hold it up to that person and look at the real life observation you see next to what you're seeing in the photo. You're going to notice so many things that aren't there that you see in real life. So whether that's subtlety in shadow, even just the proportions and the shape, there are just a lot of distortions that take place with flattening, for example. But it's easier for you to see that just in the side-by-side versus trying to explain that. So for source material, what you could do is, in a time that you set aside that's not during your sketching time, is just dedicate some time to searching out different materials as source subjects and then compiling them into something like a PDF or something that you can easily scroll through to use that source material, so that while you're sketching, it's just readily available. So even if it's in your Photos app on your phone, you know, something like that would just be used to reference. Another great resource is to use AI. So there are, I know, a lot of distortions that take place in AI itself, but for the most part, you can get some pretty good reference material, especially if there's a certain subject that you're trying to draw, you're interested in drawing, but it's hard to, you know, just get that from a Google search. You know, AI will provide a pretty good replication that you could use for practice. So I use Midjourney personally. Maybe I'll make a video about that at some point. And actually, I do want to compile a bunch of source material that I use from Midjourney and provide that to you all so you could use for free. So getting back to the warm-up, what you're really trying to do here is you're not worried about drawing exactly what you see and having it look exactly like what you see. That's not the point of these warm-ups. The warm-up is really for you to get loose. So again, going back to the exercise example, right? You're just trying to get the blood flowing, you're just trying to get your hands loosened up, you're trying to kind of get that relationship of yourself with your pencil and the materials and just feel good and confident as you're making your strokes with your pencil. So kind of pay attention to quick observation. That's another part of being loose, is just observing what you're seeing in the warm-up and interpreting that on the page without overthinking, right? So there's a little bit of a mind state you're trying to get into here as well. You could think of this as, you know, a flow state, which is such an overused term, but you hear that a lot of days, but it really is kind of true when you're getting into that mode. You're trying to separate out of that logical mind and get into that right brain mode, right? You're just kind of tuning out, you're kind of putting out all the outer distractions and just being kind of in the moment with that observation and letting what you observe come down onto the paper. So I hope you found this helpful. At the very least, even if you don't apply everything I said here, just get in the habit of warming up, even if it's for 3 to 5 minutes before you start a sketch. That's going to go a long way in you feeling more confident in just being loose as you get into drawing something that's a little bit more involved or something that takes longer. So thanks for watching. If you're interested in learning about one-on-one lessons with me, scan the QR code below or click the link in the video. All right, thanks so much. Hope to see you all next time. Bye-bye.